I was lying in my hospital bed when the notification came through on my phone. A group chat message from the hospital staff. I shouldn't have been in that chat. It was a mistake. Someone had accidentally added my number instead of another employee's, but there it was, clear as day. That old guy in 304 is such a pain. Total boomer. I swear he's got dementia or something, LOL. Room 304. That was my room. And the person who wrote it? The same nurse who'd just brought me my medication 20 minutes late. Again, without a single apology. I stared at that message for a long time, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to say a word. Not yet. Before I tell you what happened next, if you've ever been dismissed because of your age, if you've ever been treated like you don't matter just because you're older, this story is for you. This is Life in a Chocolate Box, where we share the stories that need to be told. The ones about dignity, respect, and quiet justice. If this resonates with you, please subscribe, because every voice matters, including yours. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Harold Mitchell. I'm 72 years old. I'd been admitted to St. Catherine's Hospital in downtown Portland 3 weeks earlier. Pneumonia. At my age, they don't take chances. So here I was, hooked up to monitors, getting antibiotics through an IV, trying to get my strength back. The hospital itself was decent enough. Clean. Modern. It had been renovated about 5 years ago, from what I could tell. But the service, that was another story. My nurse, her name was Brittany, was in her late 20s. Blonde, ponytail. Always on her phone. Always in a hurry. From day one, something felt off. She'd bring my meals late. Not 5 minutes late. 30 minutes. 45 minutes. By the time the food arrived, it was cold. The eggs congealed. The toast hard as cardboard. When I mentioned it once, she just shrugged. Kitchen's backed up. Nothing I can do about it. But I'd see her in the hallway, scrolling through Instagram, laughing at videos. Not backed up at all. When I'd press the call button, it would take her forever to respond. Once, I waited almost an hour just to get help to the bathroom. An hour. At my age, with my condition, that's not just inconvenient. It's humiliating. By the time she finally showed up, I'd had an accident. Right there in the bed. I was mortified. Really? She'd said, looking at me with barely concealed disgust. You couldn't hold it? I'm 72 years old. I'd built a successful business, raised a daughter, owned property all over Portland. And in that moment, I felt like a child being scolded. I called you 55 minutes ago, I said quietly. She didn't apologize. Just called housekeeping with an exasperated sigh and left me sitting there in my own waste until someone came to help. That was week 1. Week 2 was worse. My medication schedule was supposed to be strict. Blood pressure medication at 8 a.m. Antibiotics at noon and 8 p.m. Pain management as needed. But Brittany couldn't seem to keep it straight. One morning, she brought my blood pressure medication at 10:30 a.m., 2.5 hours late. Does it really matter? She said when I pointed it out. Yes, I said. It does. My doctor specifically said. I'll make a note of it. She interrupted, already turning to leave. She didn't make a note, because the next day, it happened again. The day after that, she forgot my afternoon antibiotics entirely. I had to call the nursing station 3 times before someone else brought them. By then, it was 4 p.m. 4 hours late. When the day shift nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, came on duty and saw the medication log, she was horrified. Mr. Mitchell, has this been happening regularly? Pretty regularly, yes. She frowned. I'm going to speak with the charge nurse about this. Please don't. I said. I don't want to cause trouble. Mr. Mitchell, this isn't about causing trouble. This is about your health. But I insisted, and she reluctantly agreed. Looking back, I wish I'd let her report it then. But I'd been raised to not make waves, to be polite, to not be a burden. Old habits die hard. By week 3, I was starting to notice a pattern. Brittany treated me differently than other patients. The woman in the room next to mine, Miss S. Chen, was in her 50s. Breast cancer surgery. Brittany was all smiles with her. Asked about her family. Brought her extra blankets without being asked. The man across the hall, Mr. Donovan, was maybe 60. Heart attack. Brittany chatted with him about sports. Made sure his TV remote was working. Adjusted his pillows. But me, I got the bare minimum. And sometimes, not even that. One afternoon, I asked for an extra pillow. My back was aching, and the physical therapist had suggested elevating my legs. We're short on pillows, Brittany said without looking up from her phone. Could you check? Just in case? She sighed. Fine. 20 minutes later, she hadn't returned. I pressed the call button. A different nurse answered. Yes, Mr. Mitchell? I'm sorry to bother you, but Brittany was going to bring me a pillow. Oh, she's on break. I'll grab one for you. She brought it within 5 minutes. On break. Brittany had told me they were short on pillows, then gone on break. That's when I started to understand. This wasn't about being busy. This wasn't about hospital resources. This was personal. She didn't like me. Or more accurately, she didn't like old people. I started paying closer attention after that. Watching. Listening. I noticed how her tone changed when she spoke to older patients versus younger ones. With younger patients, she was friendly, engaged, human. With older patients, especially those over 70, she was cold, perfunctory, sometimes openly annoyed. One evening, I heard her in the hallway with Mr. Renchos Kowalski, an 80-year-old man recovering from a fall. No, we already went through this, she was saying, her voice sharp. I told you, dinner is at 6. Not 5. Not 5:30. 6. I'm sorry, Mr. Kowalski sighed. His voice was shaking. I just thought. Well, you thought wrong. The schedule is the schedule. I heard his door close. Then I heard Brittany mutter something under her breath. Couldn't make out the exact words, but the contempt was clear. My hands clenched into fists. This wasn't right. This wasn't how you treated people. Any people, but especially not people who were sick. Vulnerable. Afraid. That night, I lay awake for hours, thinking about my late wife, Margaret. She'd passed away 6 years ago. Cancer. She'd spent her last weeks in a hospital not unlike this one. Had her nurses treated her this way when I wasn't there? When she was alone and scared? The thought made me sick. Something had to change. I just didn't know how yet. The next morning, my daughter Rebecca called. Hey, Dad. How are you feeling? Better. I lied. You don't sound better. What's wrong? Rebecca had always been able to read me, even over the phone. It's nothing. Just tired. Dad. I sighed. It's the nurse. The one I mentioned before. She's just difficult. Difficult how? I told her. Everything. The late medications. The missed call buttons. The cold meals. The contempt. By the time I finished, Rebecca was furious. That's completely unacceptable. I'm calling the hospital administrator right now. Rebecca, no. Please don't. Why not? Dad, you're paying for this care. You deserve better. I know, but I don't want to be that patient. The one who complains. The one who makes trouble. You're not making trouble. She is. Just. Give me a little more time. Let me handle it my way. She was quiet for a moment. What are you planning? I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out. Dad, you're not going to do anything crazy, are you? I smiled. Define crazy. That's not reassuring. Trust me, sweetheart. I've got this. After we hung up, I felt better. Talking to Rebecca always helped. She reminded me that I wasn't being unreasonable, that I wasn't being too sensitive, that I deserved respect. That afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was dozing when my phone buzzed. A notification. I picked it up, squinting at the screen. A group chat. Street. Catherine's staff. 3rd floor. I frowned. I didn't remember joining any group chat. Curious, I opened it, and my blood ran cold. The most recent message, sent just 15 minutes ago. Britt, here. That old guy in 304 is driving me crazy. Keeps asking about his meds like I don't know what I'm doing. Total boomer. Another message, from someone named Jen. OMG, is he the one who's always calling? Brittany. Yes. Like, dude, you're in a hospital. We know what we're doing. Chill out, Grandpa. Mike. Lol, why are old people so obsessed with schedules? Like, sir, you're retired. You have literally nothing else to do. Brittany. Exactly. Meanwhile, I'm busting my ass with actual sick people, and he wants me to fluff his pillows. Jen. Dead. Another message from Brittany. Honestly think he might have dementia. Asks me the same questions over and over. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. They were talking about me, mocking me, laughing at me, in a group chat. I scrolled up, saw more messages from days ago, weeks ago, other patients, other elderly patients, being discussed, ridiculed, dismissed. One message from Brittany. Room 312, peed himself again. Why can't old people just wear diapers? Another, Miss S. Kowalski asked me to repeat something 3 times. Get a hearing aid, lady. I felt sick. These were nurses, people who'd taken an oath to care for others, and they were treating us like we were less than human. My first instinct was to march down to the nurses' station and confront Brittany right then and there. But something stopped me. A memory. Years ago, when I was still running my business, I had an employee who was embezzling money. Small amounts at first, then bigger. I discovered it by accident. My partner wanted to fire him immediately, make a scene, call the police. But I'd said no. Let's wait. Let's gather evidence. Let's make sure we have everything we need before we act. We waited 3 months, documented everything, built an airtight case. When we finally confronted him, there was no room for denial, no room for excuses. He went to prison. That same instinct kicked in now. Don't react emotionally. Be strategic. Gather evidence. And then strike when they least expect it. I took screenshots. Every single message. Every conversation. Every cruel joke. I saved them all in a folder on my phone. And then I waited. Over the next few days, Brittany had no idea I'd seen the messages. She continued treating me exactly the same way. Cold, dismissive, sometimes outright rude. But now I was watching everything, documenting everything. I started keeping a detailed log in a small notebook I kept by my bed. Day 22, 8:15 a.m. Brittany brought blood pressure medication 45 minutes late. No apology offered. Day 22, 1:30 p.m. Pressed call button for assistance to bathroom. Waited 37 minutes. Brittany finally arrived, clearly annoyed. Day 22, 6:00 p.m. Dinner tray delivered ice cold. Asked if it could be reheated. Brittany said, "Kitchen's closed." Other patients received hot meals. Day 23, 9:00 a.m. Asked for fresh water. Brittany said she'd bring it in a minute. Water arrived at 11:15 a.m. Over 2 hours later, I wrote down everything. Times, dates, witnesses when possible. Meanwhile, the group chat continued. More messages about me. about other patients. I screenshot every single one. One message particularly stood out. It was from late at night. Brittany had posted a selfie from the nurse's station, making a face at the camera. Caption: "Night shift with the geriatric gang. Kill me now." 12 laughing emojis from her coworkers. I saved that one too. On day 24, something else happened. I met another patient, an older man, maybe late 70s, who was being wheeled past my room by a physical therapist. He saw me and waved. Later that afternoon, he appeared in my doorway, walker in hand. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. "Please." He shuffled in and sat in the chair by my bed, extended his hand. "Frank Kowalski, Harold Mitchell." We shook hands. "You're the guy in 304, right?" "That's me." He nodded knowingly. "Brittany's your nurse too?" I looked at him. "Yes." "How did you know?" "Because she's mine too. And she's terrible." Relief washed over me. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being too sensitive. "She is, isn't she?" I said. Frank laughed bitterly. "Terrible doesn't even cover it. Last week, I fell trying to get to the bathroom because she didn't answer my call button for 45 minutes. Ended up with a bruised hip. Did you report it?" "To who?" "The charge nurse. She's buddies with Brittany. They cover for each other." "What about the hospital administration?" He shrugged. "I thought about it. But I'm 80 years old. They'll just think I'm a complaining old man. That I'm confused. That I'm exaggerating." "You're not confused, Frank. I know that. You know that. But do they?" We sat in silence for a moment. "You know what the worst part is?" Frank said quietly. "I used to be a doctor. Practiced for 40 years. I know what good nursing looks like. And this ain't it." "You were a doctor?" "Orthopedic surgeon. Retired 15 years ago. And now look at me. Can't even get a nurse to bring me water without attitude." He shook his head. "It's humiliating, Harold. That's the word. Humiliating." I understood exactly what he meant. "Something needs to change." I said, "Good luck with that." I tried. Nobody listens. After Frank left, I sat there thinking. He was right. If he complained, they'd dismiss him. An old man, probably confused, probably difficult. But what if the complaint didn't come from a patient? What if it came from someone they couldn't dismiss? That's when the plan started to form. I called my lawyer that evening. David Chen answered on the second ring. "Harold, how are you feeling?" "Better." "Listen, David, the first need your help with something." "Of course." "What's going on?" I explained everything. The treatment, the group chat, the messages. David listened in silence. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Harold, that's absolutely appalling." "I know. Do you want to file a formal complaint?" "I can have a letter to the hospital administrator by tomorrow morning." "Not yet. I want to do something else first." "What?" "I want you to contact the building management company. Tell them the property owner wants to schedule an urgent meeting with the hospital administration." There was a pause. "You mean you want them to know you own the building?" "Not yet. Just that the owner has serious concerns about patient care." "Don't use my name." "Got it. What's the timeline?" "Soon. A few days. I want to see if anything changes first. If the hospital will address this on its own. And if they don't, then we make them." David chuckled. "You know, Harold, most people would just switch hospitals. I'm not most people. And besides, this isn't just about me. It's about Frank. About Mrs. Chen. About every elderly patient who's been treated like they don't matter." "I understand. I'll make the call tomorrow." "Thank you, David." "One more thing, Harold." "Yeah? Be careful. If this nurse realizes you're onto her, she might retaliate. Let her try." After we hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't powerless. I was just waiting for the right moment. The next 2 days were revealing. I continued documenting Brittany's behavior, but I also started paying attention to the other staff members. Not all of them were bad. Patricia, the day shift nurse, was wonderful, kind, attentive, professional. There was another nurse, a young man named Marcus, who always had a smile. He'd stop by, even when I wasn't his patient, ask how I was doing, adjust my blankets, bring me fresh ice water without being asked. "You doing okay today, Mr. Mitchell?" he'd say. "Much better, thanks to you. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for." Such a simple statement, but it meant everything, because it showed me that the problem wasn't the hospital. It was specific people. People like Brittany. And if specific people were the problem, then specific people could be the solution. On day 26, something interesting happened. A hospital administrator, someone I'd never seen before, was doing rounds, stopping in each room, asking patients how things were going. She was in her 40s, professional, carrying a tablet. When she got to my room, she knocked politely. "Mr. Mitchell? I'm Karen Torres, assistant administrator. Do you have a moment?" "Of course." She came in, closed the door partway, smiled warmly. "I'm doing some patient satisfaction check-ins. Just wanted to see how your stay has been so far." This was my chance. I could tell her everything right now, but something made me pause. If I complained now, it would be my word against Brittany's. She'd deny it. Her friends would back her up, and I'd be labeled a difficult patient. No, I needed to wait for the right moment. "It's been fine," I said. "Any concerns at all? With care? With staff?" "No concerns." She made a note on her tablet. "Wonderful. Please don't hesitate to let us know if anything comes up." "I will." After she left, I felt a twinge of guilt. I'd just lied to an administrator. But it was strategic, because I knew something she didn't. The real complaint was coming, and it would be impossible to ignore. That evening, I got a call from David. "It's done," he said. The building management company contacted the hospital administration, requested a meeting to discuss tenant concerns, specifically about patient care quality. What did they say? They're taking it very seriously. The hospital administrator, Caroline Hughes, called back within an hour. She wants to meet as soon as possible. Good. Harold, they're going to want to know who made the complaint. Are you ready for that? I am. This is going to get messy. You know that, right? I'm counting on it. 2 days later, early in the morning, there was a knock on my door. "Come in," I said. A woman in a business suit entered, mid-40s, polished, professional. She looked nervous. "Mr. Mitchell?" "Yes. My name is Caroline Hughes. I'm the hospital administrator. Do you have a few minutes?" I set down the book I'd been reading. "Of course. Please, sit." She closed the door behind her and sat in the chair by my bed. "Mr. Mitchell, I'll be direct. We received some concerning communication from our building management company. They indicated that the property owner has significant concerns about patient care here at Street Catherine's." "I see." The owner didn't provide specific details, but they did give us your room number, which led me to believe that perhaps you'd filed a complaint. I looked at her carefully. "I didn't file a complaint, Miss Hughes." She looked confused. "You didn't?" "No." "Then I'm not sure I understand. Why would the property owner mention your room specifically?" I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I said quietly, "Because I am the property owner." The color drained from her face. You own this building?" "I do." She sat back in her chair, stunned. "I had no idea. Our lease records show a management company." That's correct. I prefer to keep my ownership private. I hired a management company to handle day-to-day operations. Mr. Mitchell, if there's been an issue with your care, I need to know. This is extremely serious. I reached for my phone, pulled up the screenshots folder. There has been an issue, Miss Hughes. Multiple issues, actually. And I think you should see this. I handed her my phone. She took it, still looking dazed, and started scrolling. I watched her face change as she read. Shock. Then horror. Then anger. She read every message, every cruel joke, every dismissive comment. When she got to the selfie Brittany had posted, the one with the caption about the geriatric gang, her hands started shaking. Oh my God, she whispered. She kept scrolling, seeing all of it. Not just about me, about Frank, about Miss S. Chen, about patients whose names I didn't even know. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. Mr. Mitchell, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. This is not who we are as an institution. Are you sure about that? I asked quietly, because this has been going on for weeks, possibly months, possibly years, and nobody noticed. Nobody stopped it. You're right. She took a breath, composing herself. You're absolutely right, and I take full responsibility. I don't want your apology, Miss Hughes. I want action. You'll have it. I promise you. I want that nurse, Brittany, held accountable. But I also want systematic change. I want training, real training, for every staff member, on patient dignity, on respect, on what it means to actually care for people. Done. Absolutely done. I want the other nurses in that group chat identified and disciplined. They will be. And I want regular audits, patient satisfaction surveys, real ones, anonymous ones, so this never happens again. She nodded, wiping her eyes. You have my word. Good. Because Miss Hughes, I'm not threatening to terminate your lease, but I will be watching very closely. And if things don't change, we'll revisit that conversation. I understand completely. She stood up, extending her hand. Thank you, she said quietly, for bringing this to my attention, for giving us a chance to make this right, and for not giving up on us. I shook her hand. I haven't given up, Miss Hughes, but my patience is not unlimited. Understood. After she left, I lay back in my bed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Within 30 minutes, Brittany was called into the administrator's office. I didn't witness it, but Patricia told me about it later. Apparently half the floor heard Brittany's raised voice through the closed door. She'd walked in thinking it was routine, maybe a schedule change. Instead, she found Miss Hughes, the head of nursing, and 2 people from HR waiting for her. On the conference table, printouts of every single group chat message. Have a seat, Brittany, Miss Hughes had said. Brittany sat down, confused. Do you recognize these? Miss Hughes pushed the printouts toward her. Brittany's face went white as she saw the messages. Her messages. 1. This is private. You can't. Private? The head of nursing leaned forward. Brittany, you mocked patients. Sick, vulnerable people who trusted you with their care. You called them names, joked about their conditions, made them feel less than human. I was just venting. Everyone vents. There's a difference between venting and cruelty. Miss Hughes said coldly. And this is cruelty. One of the HR representatives spoke up. You're being placed on immediate unpaid suspension pending a full investigation. You need to collect your personal belongings and leave the premises within the hour. Brittany started crying. Please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I need this job. You should have thought of that before you disrespected the people you're supposed to care for. Brittany's voice turned bitter. Who even complained? Was it that old guy in 304? Mr. Mitchell? Miss. Hughes's expression didn't change. That's confidential. It was him, wasn't it? That miserable old... Enough. Miss. Hughes stood. You're dismissed, Brittany. Leave now. Security will escort you out, if necessary. Brittany gathered her things, still crying, and left the hospital. Patricia told me all of this later, with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She deserved it, Patricia said. But it's still hard to watch. She's so young. Being young doesn't excuse being cruel, I said. No, it doesn't. That afternoon, every single staff member on the 3rd floor was called into an emergency meeting. Even patients knew something big was happening. The hallways were buzzing. Frank wheeled himself to my room. What's going on? Change, I said. Finally. In the conference room, Miss Hughes addressed the entire staff. I wasn't there, but Marcus told me about it later. She was furious. Marcus said, I've never seen her like that. Apparently, Miss Hughes had displayed the group chat messages on a projector for everyone to see. The room had gone completely silent. This, Miss Hughes had said, is what's been happening on this floor, right under our noses. Staff members mocking patients, treating them like burdens, like jokes. She'd paused, letting it sink in. Some of you are in this chat. Some of you sent these messages. Some of you just watched it happen and said nothing. Another pause. Effective immediately. Every person in that group chat will be investigated. If you participated in mocking patients, you will face disciplinary action. If you're found to have directly violated patient care standards, you will be terminated. Someone had raised their hand. What if we were in the chat but didn't say anything bad? Then you're guilty of enabling this behavior. And that has consequences too. The room stayed silent. Starting next week, Miss Hughes continued, every staff member in this hospital will undergo mandatory retraining, patient dignity, cultural competency, professional conduct, no exceptions. She'd looked around the room. I want to be very clear. This behavior ends today. Right now. Street, Catherine's, is supposed to be a place of healing, of compassion. And we have failed that mission. We've failed our patients. And we've failed ourselves. Her voice had softened slightly. But we can do better. We must do better. And we will. The meeting ended in silence. Marcus said he'd never been more proud to work somewhere, and more ashamed at the same time. How did it even get this bad? He'd ask me later. Because nobody was watching. I said. Nobody was holding them accountable. Well, someone's watching now. Over the next week, 3 more nurses were suspended. 2 were eventually fired. The group chat was deleted, but not before HR had archived every message as evidence. A new policy was implemented. Any staff member caught disparaging patients in any format would face immediate termination. Patient satisfaction surveys were sent out. Anonymous. Comprehensive. And a new position was created, patient advocate, someone whose sole job was to listen to complaints and ensure they were addressed. The hospital was transforming, rapidly. And it all started because someone finally said, enough. On day 31, a young woman knocked on my door. I didn't recognize her at first. She looked different, smaller, humbled. Then I realized it was Brittany. Mr. Mitchell, she said quietly. Can I come in? I hesitated, then nodded. All right. She stood at the foot of my bed, hands clasped in front of her. I came to apologize, she said. Her voice was shaking. For everything. For how I treated you. For what I said. For making you feel less than human. I didn't say anything, just listened. I was wrong. Completely, totally wrong. And I'm ashamed. Why did you do it? I asked. She looked down. I don't know. I think somewhere along the way, I forgot. I forgot that patients are people. They became tasks, problems to solve, things on my to-do list. She wiped her eyes. And older patients were the hardest, because they need more time, more patience. And I didn't have it, or I didn't want to give it. So you mocked them instead. Yes. She looked up at me. And I'm so sorry. Do you understand what you did? I asked. The damage you caused. I don't know. Do you? Because it's not just about hurt feelings, Brittany. It's about dignity. It's about treating people like they matter, even when they're sick, even when they're old, even when they're difficult. I know. My wife died 6 years ago, in a hospital not unlike this one. And every day I wonder, did her nurses treat her the way you treated me when I wasn't there? Did they mock her? Did they roll their eyes when she asked for help? Brittany was openly crying now. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, I don't want to ruin your life, Brittany, but I do want you to learn from this. Really learn. I have. I swear I have. Then prove it. Be better. Do better. And never forget that every patient you care for is someone's father, someone's mother, someone's whole world. She nodded, unable to speak. Now get out of my room, and don't come back until you've figured out what kind of nurse you actually want to be. She left quietly, and I hoped, truly hoped, that she'd meant what she said. 2 days later, I was discharged. Dr. Patel signed off on my release. My lungs were clear. My strength was back. I was ready to go home. Rebecca drove down from Seattle to pick me up. How do you feel, Dad? She asked, as we pulled out of the parking lot. Good. Really good. She glanced at me. Something happened, didn't it? You seem different. I smiled. Let's just say I reminded a few people what respect looks like. Dad, what did you do? Nothing dramatic. Just stood up for myself. And for others who couldn't. She shook her head, smiling. You're something else, you know that? I learned from the best. Your mother never let anyone push her around. No, she didn't. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Rebecca said, Dad, I'm proud of you. For what? For not letting them treat you like you didn't matter. Because you do. You matter so much. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you, sweetheart. A month passed. I was home, fully recovered, when I got a letter in the mail. From Street, Catherine's hospital. Inside was a handwritten note from Miss Hughes. Dear Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to let you know that I've completed my suspension and all required retraining. The hospital has allowed me to return to work, but on probation. Every single day, I think about what I did to you and to the other patients. I'm ashamed of the person I was, but I'm trying to be different now. I volunteered to work extra shifts in the geriatric ward. I wanted to face what I'd been avoiding. And you know what I learned? That older patients aren't burdens. They're people with incredible stories. People who've lived full lives. People who deserve respect. Yesterday, an elderly man asked me to repeat something 3 times. The old me would have rolled my eyes, would have been annoyed. Instead, I smiled. I repeated it as many times as he needed. And then I sat with him for 10 minutes and just talked. He told me about his wife, about how they'd been married for 52 years, about how she'd passed away last spring, and he still sets a place for her at dinner sometimes. I cried in the break room after that conversation because I realized how much I'd been missing, how much humanity I'd been blind to. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. but I wanted you to know that you changed me. You didn't destroy my career. You saved it. Because I was becoming someone I'm ashamed of. And you stopped me before it was too late. Thank you. Brittany Walsh. I set the letter down on my kitchen table. And I surprised myself. I felt hope. Maybe people could change. Maybe it wasn't too late. I picked up a pen and wrote back. Dear Brittany, thank you for your letter and for your honesty. I'm glad you're trying to do better. That's all any of us can do. Try. But remember, this isn't about one good conversation with one patient. This is about consistency. About showing up every single day with compassion, even when you're tired, even when you're overwhelmed, even when it's hard. The patients you care for deserve nothing less. I believe you can be the nurse you want to be, but you have to choose it every single day. Respectfully, Harold Mitchell. I mailed it that afternoon, and I genuinely hoped she'd keep choosing compassion. 3 months after my discharge, Miss Hughes called me. Mr. Mitchell, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. How are things at the hospital? Much better. I wanted to update you on a few things. I'm listening. We've implemented quarterly patient satisfaction surveys now, anonymous and comprehensive. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive since the changes. That's wonderful. We've also created a mentor program. Senior nurses are now paired with newer nurses to teach them not just clinical skills, but bedside manner, empathy, patient advocacy. That's exactly what's needed. And Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to ask your permission for something. What's that? We'd like to create a plaque in our main lobby dedicated to patient dignity and respect. And we'd like to name it in your honor. I was quiet for a moment. Miss Hughes, that's very kind, but I'd prefer you didn't use my name. May I ask why? Because this isn't about me. It's about the principle. If you put my name on it, it becomes about one person, one complaint. But if you keep it general, it becomes about something bigger, about a commitment that lasts beyond any individual. She was silent for a moment. That's incredibly wise. Just call it the patient dignity commitment. Make it about the promise you're making to every patient who walks through your doors. We will. Thank you. After we hung up, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee. The morning was cool, quiet, the kind of morning Margaret would have loved. I thought about everything that had happened. The mistreatment, the messages, the confrontation, the change. And I realized something. I could have stayed silent, could have just switched hospitals, could have let it go. But then nothing would have changed. Frank would still be waiting 45 minutes for a call button response. Mrs. Chen would still be treated with less care than younger patients. Future elderly patients would still be mocked in group chats. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone who can't. 6 months later, I was at a coffee shop in downtown Portland when someone approached my table. A man in his 30s. Looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Mr. Mitchell? Yes. You probably don't remember me. I'm Marcus. I was one of the nurses at St. Catherine's when you were there. Marcus. Of course I remember. You were one of the good ones. He smiled. Thank you. I just wanted to say, what you did changed everything at that hospital. The culture is completely different now. I'm glad to hear that. Brittany, the nurse who treated you badly? She's actually become one of our best nurses. She volunteers for the hardest cases, spends extra time with elderly patients. It's like she's trying to make up for what she did. Good for her. And we lost a few nurses in the process. The ones who refused to change, who thought the new standards were too much. But honestly, we're better off without them. He paused. You saved lives, Mr. Mitchell. Not just by holding people accountable, but by forcing us to remember why we became nurses in the first place. You did that yourselves. I just gave you a push. After he left, I finished my coffee and walked home through the autumn streets. The leaves were turning gold and red. The air smelled like rain, and I thought about legacy, about what we leave behind. I'd built a successful business, made smart investments, owned valuable property. But the thing I was most proud of, it wasn't any of that. It was reminding people that respect is not negotiable, that dignity is not optional, that every human being, regardless of age or wealth or status, deserves to be treated like they matter, because they do. A year later, I received an invitation. Street. Catherine's Hospital was hosting a Patient Care Excellence Award ceremony, and they wanted me to attend as a guest of honor. I almost declined. I'd never been one for fanfare. But Rebecca convinced me to go. Dad, you changed that place. You should see what you accomplished. So I went. The ceremony was held in the hospital's conference center. Dozens of staff members attended. Nurses, doctors, administrators. Miss Hughes gave a speech about the transformation the hospital had undergone, about the Mitchell Standard, though she still didn't use my name publicly, about the commitment to patient dignity that now guided every decision. Then she introduced me. We have a special guest with us today. Someone who reminded us what healthcare is supposed to be about, not just treating illness, but honoring humanity. Please welcome Mr. Harold Mitchell. I stood up, surprised by the applause. I hadn't prepared a speech, but I walked to the front and spoke from the heart. Thank you for inviting me today. When I was a patient here, I experienced something that no one should experience. I was dismissed, mocked, treated like I was less than human. The room was completely silent. But I also experienced something else. I experienced what happens when good people decide to do better, when an institution decides that change is necessary, when everyone commits to a higher standard. I paused. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to celebrate what you've become. A place that truly cares. A place that sees every patient as a whole person. A place that treats dignity as non-negotiable. I looked around the room. Some of you were part of the problem, and you chose to change. That takes courage. That takes humility. And I respect that. More applause. Others of you were always doing the right thing. You were the light in a dark time, and you deserve recognition for staying true to your values, even when it wasn't easy. I saw Marcus in the audience. He smiled. My hope is that this commitment lasts, not just for a year or two, but forever. That every new nurse who walks through your doors learns from day one, patients are people. Respect is mandatory. Dignity is everything. I stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted in applause. A standing ovation. I saw tears on some faces, smiles on others. And in the back row, I saw Brittany. She wasn't clapping. She was crying. But when she saw me looking at her, she mouthed 2 words. Thank you. I nodded. After the ceremony, several people came up to thank me personally. Patricia, the kind day shift nurse, hugged me. You're a hero, Mr. Mitchell. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to accept being treated poorly. That's exactly what a hero is. Doctor. Patel shook my hand. I wish I'd known what was happening on that floor. I would have done something. You couldn't have known. The system was designed to hide it. But now, the system is designed to expose it. That's the difference. Frank Kowalski was there too. He'd been discharged months ago but came back for the event. Harold, you magnificent bastard, he said, grinning. You actually did it. We did it, Frank. Every patient who refused to stay silent. We all did it. He laughed. Well, you did it louder than the rest of us. As I left that evening, Miss Hughes walked me to my car. Mr. Mitchell, I can't thank you enough. You already have. By changing, we'll never go back to the way it was. I promise you that. Good. Because the moment you get comfortable, the moment you stop paying attention, that's when it creeps back in. I know. That's why we've made accountability part of our culture now. It's not about punishment. It's about constant improvement. I got in my car, started the engine, then I rolled down the window. Miss Hughes? Yes. Thank you for listening, for caring enough to change. Not every administrator would have done that. She smiled. Not every patient would have given us the chance. I drove home as the sun set over Portland, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. At peace. 2 years after everything happened, I was reading the newspaper one morning when an article caught my eye. St. Catherine's Hospital receives national recognition for patient care excellence. I read the article with interest. Apparently, the hospital had been nominated for a prestigious healthcare award. The citation specifically mentioned their Comprehensive Patient Dignity Initiative and their Transformational Cultural Change. The article quoted Miss Hughes. We learned that excellence in healthcare isn't just about medical outcomes. It's about how we treat people, how we honor their humanity. That's the Mitchell Standard, and it guides everything we do. There it was, the Mitchell Standard, in a national publication. I cut out the article and tucked it into a drawer, not because I wanted to brag, but because I wanted to remember that change is possible, that one voice can make a difference, that standing up for yourself can create ripples that spread far beyond what you can see. 3 years later, I was invited to speak at a nursing school graduation. The dean had read about what happened at St. Catherine's. She wanted me to address the new graduates about patient dignity. I almost said no. Public speaking wasn't my thing. But Rebecca encouraged me. Dad, these young nurses need to hear your story. They need to understand what their patients experience. So I went. I stood in front of 200 young nursing graduates and told them my story. I told them about Brittany, about the group chat, about feeling invisible and mocked and dismissed. But I also told them about change, about second chances, about the power of choosing compassion. When I finished, the auditorium was silent. Then one student raised her hand. Mr. Mitchell, what's your advice for us? How do we make sure we never become like that? I thought carefully before answering. Remember why you chose this profession. You didn't become nurses to check boxes or complete tasks. You became nurses to care for people, to help them heal, to be present in their most vulnerable moments. I paused. And on the days when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when you want to cut corners or roll your eyes or make a joke at a patient's expense, remember this, that patient is someone's whole world. They're someone's mother or father or spouse or best friend, and they deserve your very best, not your leftovers, your best. Another student spoke up. But what if we make mistakes? What if we mess up? Then you apologize. You learn. You do better. The difference between a bad nurse and a good nurse isn't that the good nurse never makes mistakes. It's that the good nurse takes responsibility and changes. After the ceremony, dozens of students came up to talk to me. One young woman, who couldn't have been more than 23, had tears in her eyes. Mr. Mitchell, my grandmother died in a nursing home last year, and I always wondered if her nurses treated her well when we weren't there. Your story made me realize I want to be the kind of nurse who would have taken care of her with love, who would have seen her as a person, not a patient number. Then be that nurse. I said, the profession needs people like you. As I left the auditorium, I thought about all the patients those graduates would care for over their careers. Thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands. And if even a few of them remembered what I'd said, If even a few of them chose compassion over convenience, then this whole experience meant something. 5 years after everything happened, I got a call from an unexpected source, a documentary filmmaker. Her name was Jennifer Reed. She was making a film about patient advocacy and healthcare reform. Mr. Mitchell, I've been researching your story. What happened at St. Catherine's Hospital, and I'd love to interview you for the film. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I understand. But your story isn't just about one hospital. It's about a systemic problem in healthcare, about how we treat our elderly and vulnerable patients, about what happens when someone finally says enough. I thought about it for a few days. Finally, I agreed. But on one condition: interview Brittany too. Show the whole story. Not just the villain and the victim, but the transformation, the redemption. Are you sure? I'm sure. Because if this documentary is going to mean anything, it has to show that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define us. Jennifer agreed. The documentary came out a year later. It was called The Mitchell Standard: Demanding Dignity in Healthcare. It featured interviews with me, Brittany, Miss Hughes, Frank Kowalski, and dozens of other patients and healthcare workers. It showed the group chat messages, the confrontation, the changes that followed. But it also showed Brittany's transformation, her work with elderly patients now, her advocacy for patient rights, her commitment to being better. The film aired on PBS. Then Netflix picked it up. Within months, hospitals across the country started implementing their own Mitchell Standard programs. Patient dignity training became mandatory in nursing schools. Healthcare organizations created ombudsman positions specifically to address elder mistreatment. It became a movement. All because I refused to accept being treated as less than human. I'm 80 years old now. 8 years have passed since my stay at St. Catherine's Hospital. Last week, I went back, not as a patient, but as a visitor. They'd asked me to tour the new patient care wing, to see how the hospital had continued to evolve. As I walked through the halls, I noticed something immediately. The staff were different, more attentive, more present, more human. I saw a nurse sitting on the edge of an elderly man's bed, just talking, not rushing, not looking at her phone, just listening. I saw a doctor crouch down to make eye contact with an older woman in a wheelchair, speaking to her with respect, with patience. I saw patient dignity posters on the walls, reminders that every patient deserves compassion. That age is not a burden. That vulnerability is not weakness. In the main lobby, there was a plaque, just as Miss Hughes had promised years ago. The patient dignity commitment: we promise to treat every patient with respect, compassion, and humanity. Not because of who they are or what they have, but because they are human. This is our standard. This is our pledge. This is who we are. I stood in front of that plaque for a long time. A young nurse walked by, then stopped. Mr. Mitchell? I turned. I didn't recognize her. I'm sorry, have we met? No, but I've heard about you. We all have. You're part of our training. Your story is taught to every new employee here. Really? Really? They tell us about what happened, about how you stood up for yourself, about how you changed this hospital. And they tell us, never forget that every patient could be Mr. Mitchell, someone who deserves respect, someone who's watching, someone who matters. She smiled. Thank you for making us better. She walked away, and I stood there, overwhelmed. My story was being told, being passed down, becoming part of the culture. And maybe, just maybe, that meant no other elderly patient would have to feel the way I'd felt. No other Frank Kowalski would fall because a nurse didn't answer the call button. No other person would be mocked in a group chat for daring to need help. That was legacy. That was impact. That was change. If you've ever been dismissed because of your age, if you've ever been treated like you don't matter, please hear this. You matter. You always have. You always will. Your worth is not determined by your productivity, not by your youth, not by your health. Your worth is inherent. It exists because you exist. And if someone treats you as less than human, you have every right to stand up and say, "No, this is not acceptable. I deserve better." Because you do. We all do. I'm Harold Mitchell. I'm 80 years old, and I refused to be invisible. Not because I was wealthy, not because I owned a building, but because I knew my worth. And I hope my story reminds you of yours. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Life in a Chocolate Box. Share your own story. Let your voice be heard, because every voice matters. Every story has power, and every person deserves dignity. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, respect is not a privilege. It's a right. Never let anyone take that from you.